Ramlika. First of all, I would like to, appreciate the effort of LSE South Asia for getting us the South Asian perspective, because somehow we South Asians are not very good talking to each other. So we do need convening places, and more convening places are needed to share. And it has been very useful to hear from different countries. I'll spend lesser time on numbers, just give you a snapshot, but will come on the response and some of the policy side, which I think all of us need to reflect upon. So in terms of numbers, Pakistan's number as of today, the confirmed official numbers are 10,072 cases. And this number actually went up in the past 2 weeks quite, sharply. So we are adding about 500 to 600 people a day these days in this number. And one of the reasons is that testing services have gone up. So we have 212 deaths, and the fatality rate basically is touching about 2% at this point in time. And given the federation structure, so we have around 70% cases in the provinces of Punjab and Sindh. And about 53 labs have been set up for the testing of this particular, virus. The affected group, I think the numbers resonate with the rest of South Asia. So around 40% people who are affected are younger people in the age group of 25 to 50. And I can understand, because these are the people who go out and work. The older people stay at home and children's schools are closed. So they are more exposed, and we have, like rest of demography in South Asia, a very young population. Health system remains very weak. Needless to say, 1.12% of GDP is spent on the health sector, which is very, very low as compared to, the ASEAN and other standards. I think the average health spend on person is about $50 a year. So what I'm trying to say is that that's a snapshot where Pakistan stands today. Basic reason for, the coronavirus in Pakistan were given three. Interestingly, very little or none of the patients came from China, although we have a border with China. So most of the people who came were religious pilgrims coming back from Iran, where we have a porous border in Balochistan, south of Pakistan. And there was basically quarantines and other things were set up in emergency, but lots of people had already walked into Pakistan. So that's where the main entry of COVID-19 started. Pakistan shares borders, as you know, with 5 countries. So then the border sealing started. Second was this religious, gathering of the Tablighi Jamaat, which was in February, and lots of people came out of that and moved to smaller towns, and that started multiplying. I would also say that Pakistan, until early February, we were also going through the Pakistan Super Cricket League, where stadiums were full and everything. So that might have had an impact as well in terms of. So about 23rd March, the lockdown started. It was basically there was no real consensus among the federation and provinces. So one province, Sindh, where Karachi is, they went very strict on lockdown, whereas the Prime Minister of Pakistan's view was that very strict lockdown is not sustainable. So let's try and do where pockets are, put some, serious lockdown there, but other people have to come for their livelihoods and others. So now, in terms of coordination, after much discussion, Pakistan has come up with a National Command and Operations Center. And I will not go into numbers. It has a good website. It's covid.gov.pk. And for the analytical work, please look at Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. They have published about 24 pieces about the impact and other things, so that we can get more data. But now this coordinating effort is between the provinces, the military, and the national leadership. All of them are jointly doing it. So that's where Pakistan stands. In terms of impact on economy, it's very hard to predict. Situation is evolving. But what I would say is that there are 3 scenarios. At this point in time, we have about 40 million people below the poverty line. And in the worst case scenario, it might double or it might touch about 100 million people, which will be 50% of our population. That's the worst case scenario. We are in the danger of losing, some 30 up to 30 million jobs as well, because GDP Pakistan was struggling. We were in a stabilization phase, and safe estimates are that GDP will go down to 1% or maybe below, which will have a major impact on Pakistan's economy in this financial year. So that's where the situation stands now. In terms of state response, it has been on three sides. I would say that it was somewhat reasonable because we already had a cash transfer program for the poor. So immediately government scaled it up, and the Prime Minister announced a package of something like 1.2 trillion rupees, which is about 6 billion pounds in various forms. So it was focused on the poor and also covering some people above the poverty line, the informal workforce. We have a system where you can electronically transfer money and the biometrics, and that has been expanded. The second response was immediately through slashing down the interest rates, providing more, credit and fiscal space to corporate sector. The people who actually have not really got, much attention are the rural economy, which employs almost 40% of the workforce, and also the informal SMEs. They are still, have not been properly targeted. In terms of philanthropy, again, like other countries, huge number of people have come up and they are providing food and, other things to people. And as Ramzan comes, it will go up as well. So that's where the situation, in terms of economy, couple of things I will actually raise. That recently the G20's decision of debt suspension will provide some fiscal space. Interestingly, although there's a pressure on oil producing countries, the remittance level in Pakistan has not declined. So people are sending money back home. So that's again, a positive sign. This crashing of oil prices, that's one of the largest imports of Pakistan, will also help the fiscal space somewhat, in Pakistan. So that's the kind of package, both on the financial side and others, Pakistan has given, and now mostly provinces and the federation are coming on the same page in terms of how to go forward. My understanding is that Pakistan is preparing for the peak in the middle of May, and our preparation and our limited health resources is up to 50,000 patients, and let's say about 10,000 are hospitalized. So Pakistan is preparing for that worst case scenario. And testing kits, about 100,000 have been imported, and China has been sending a lot of, masks and doctors and ventilators now to help Pakistan under the China-Pakistan economic corridor. In terms of people's response, I think Pakistan has struggled to deal with the religious leaders as Ramadan comes in. They want to open up the mosques and they want to have, the prayers and everything. So there is a 20-point SOP agreed between the religious leaders and the government that they have to, I think they've limited the numbers, they have limited that elderlies don't come, and they have tried to put in, the disinfection SOPs. But my worry is that, like other countries, it's very hard to regulate and monitor, and the temperatures might go up, and that will have a spike in Pakistan. Prime Minister has been indicating that if I see a spike, so I will lock down the mosques. But the fear is that would that be too late for Pakistan to do that? Although, like a strong school of thought thinks that if Pakistan had taken stringent measures on mosques, so general mood of the population would have supported it. So far, there is no big, social unrest we see, other than some people breaking down the quarantines and others, and there are protests from traders. They want to open up shops. For the last 10 days or so, the lockdown has been relaxed, and Pakistan is coming with something they call smart lockdown. So for instance, they have relaxed the construction industry. They have relaxed, the food industry so that the delivery chains start working. And today I went out after quite some time for a lunch meeting where we ensured social distancing. But I saw quite a few cars and people, moving on the roads, which in fact was worrisome for me. That people I saw looked a bit relaxed outside and not really looking at it that seriously. So that's the kind of people reaction. Pakistan is very heavy. We have about 60 media channels. So every 5 minutes, they are really, rightly or wrongly, they are creating a hype that we should be careful. But I think a more solid communication campaign to win the, people's reaction would be important. And that's where government needs to focus more. I'll come to some of the policy issues here, which you have tried to link it through SARC, but I will try and link it a little wider. I think one of the things is that SARC kind of things are diplomatic forums, which basically look at things in a composite manner. This particular, pandemic has, given us perhaps a window, and Prime Minister Modi's initiative to have the SARC call on health was a good initiative, but we could not sustain it further because every country is looking at internally. My fear is that we will get more internal focused, whereas if we don't use SARC, but we could have some forums looking at just the pandemic and the impact related thing, maybe in the private space and the government space, that might get more traction rather than activating something which has been hostage to India-Pakistan, tension for years and years. I've been just being pragmatic and practical and looking at the real politic of the region. But I think the region must talk. We are shamefully low on human development. And this kind of thing actually can become a national security issue for countries like Pakistan and India, which are very populous and the young population get infected. So we got to think. I'm also seeing in the region, I think the influence of China will increase because the Western countries will be more inward looking and, looking at their own systems and rebuilding the economy. And whereas China, they will have fiscal pressures, but I do see some, people would look up to them to write off their loans and other things, particularly in Belt and Road Initiative. And let's see what kind of leadership role China takes in the South West Asia here. Now, trade. 80% of the business activity is closed. And what's happening is that perhaps that's the time that we need to look at regional markets ourselves. And that is where, we can revive our economic activities. But for that, there's no dialogue so far, which has started. So in the closing down, I think I will raise two fundamental questions. The rational choice actually says that Pakistan and India and other countries should start re-evaluating their public policy priorities and more towards human development and sustainability and perhaps cooperation. Rational choice doesn't hold in this region and other parts. Realpolitik might definitely will kill it. But I think we need to look at pockets of, at the sub-national level or private level, at least starting a dialogue on that. And more countries join, the better it will be. My second question, and I will close on that, is that, this particular pandemic, again, is a reminder that there will be a huge vacuum of financial resources, which these countries will be needing. And donors and Western multilaterals might not have the muscle to meet that. So we need some kind of innovative ways of cooperating and reaching out to non-traditional ways of raising money if we want to get back to stability. These are the two challenges I think South Asia as a whole should look at it other than just reacting to the pandemic. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. I think Asif has had to go. So for those of you who are sending in questions, oh, Asif is here.